You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. What if I told you that the reason people can't control you anymore is because you've quietly mastered control over yourself? There was a time when a harsh comment could ruin your entire day. When guilt trips, subtle pressure, or emotional games pulled you into reactions you later regretted. But something has shifted. You pause longer, you question more, you respond instead of react. And most importantly, you no longer feel the need to explain yourself to everyone. That's not coldness, that's growth. In this video, we're breaking down 10 clear signs that you're no longer easily manipulated, signs rooted deeply in Stoic philosophy and the timeless wisdom of thinkers like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca. These aren't loud changes. They're quiet, powerful transformations that make you emotionally untouchable without losing your humanity. Some of these signs may surprise you. Others may confirm what you've already started to notice about yourself. Watch this video until the very end, because the final sign is the one that truly separates emotional independence from emotional control. And once you understand it, you'll never see manipulation the same way again. Number 1, you pause before reacting instead of responding emotionally on impulse. You know you're no longer easily manipulated when you feel the surge of emotion rise in your chest, and you don't immediately obey it. There's a split second now, a quiet space that didn't exist before. Someone says something sharp, provocative, tempting, or designed to hook you, and instead of snapping back or scrambling to defend yourself, you pause. You breathe, you watch. That pause is power. That pause is discipline. That pause is the difference between being controlled and being sovereign. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus reminded you that it's not things that upset us, but our judgments about things. Notice what that means. The emotion is not the tyrant. Your interpretation is. When you pause, you interrupt the chain reaction between stimulus and judgment. You stop treating your first emotional impulse as truth. You stop assuming that because you feel something intensely, you must act on it immediately. That is maturity. That is strength. Impulse is fast. Manipulation relies on speed. It depends on your reactivity. If someone can provoke you into instant anger, instant guilt, instant fear, or instant excitement, they can steer you. But when you cultivate the habit of pausing, you become difficult to steer. You stop being a puppet pulled by invisible strings. Instead, you become deliberate. You become measured. You become someone whose responses are chosen, not triggered. And this doesn't mean you suppress emotion. It means you observe it. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." When you pause, you are exercising that power. You're saying, "I feel this, but I am not this." There's a subtle but critical shift there. You create distance between yourself and the surge. That distance is freedom. You can train this. Start small. The next time you feel irritation flicker, don't speak immediately. Take one slow breath, then another. Let the heat cool by even 5%. You don't need a dramatic ritual. Just inhale deeply through your nose, hold for a moment, and exhale longer than you inhaled. Feel your shoulders drop. Feel your jaw unclench. Teach your nervous system that it does not have to fire at every spark. This is a practical discipline, not a philosophical abstraction. Then go further. When emotion rises, label it silently, not in a dramatic way, calmly. This is anger. This is anxiety. This is pride. Labeling forces the thinking part of your brain to engage. It shifts you from being immersed in the emotion to observing it. The Stoics called this examining your impressions. Before accepting an impression as true, you question it. Is this insult truly catastrophic? Is this urgency real or manufactured? Is this pressure actually mine to carry? You pause and ask, what would a calm mind do here? Not a wounded ego, not a frightened inner child, a calm, centered, disciplined mind. When you begin to ask that question consistently, you stop reacting from raw instinct. You respond from principle. This is where manipulation starts to lose its grip on you, because manipulation thrives on emotional leverage. Guilt trips, flattery, intimidation, urgency. If someone can make you feel rushed, ashamed, or overly validated, they can nudge you into decisions that don't serve you. But when you pause, you refuse to be rushed. You refuse to be emotionally cornered. You become slower and paradoxically stronger. Slowness here is not weakness. It is intentionality. It is composure. Seneca warned that he who is brave is free. Bravery in this sense is the courage to withstand discomfort without immediately trying to discharge it. When anger burns, it takes bravery to sit with it instead of releasing it in a sharp reply. When anxiety tightens your chest, it takes bravery to remain steady rather than scrambling for reassurance. That bravery is a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Practice delayed response. Give yourself a personal rule: no important decision made in the first wave of emotion, not in anger, not in excitement, not in fear. Let the first surge pass. It always does. Emotions are weather patterns, not permanent climates. When you remember this, you stop treating every emotional spike as a command. Another exercise: rehearse adversity in your mind. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of challenges. Spend a few minutes imagining criticism, pressure, or provocation, not to scare yourself, but to prepare. Visualize yourself staying calm, see yourself pausing, feel yourself breathing steadily. By mentally practicing composure, you make it more accessible in real moments. You prime your nervous system for restraint. And here's something even subtler: begin to enjoy the pause. There is dignity in it. When you don't react immediately, you communicate, without saying a word, that you are not easily shaken. You signal that your mind is not for sale. That silence, that stillness before speaking, can be more powerful than any clever comeback. It unsettles those who expect volatility. It frustrates those who rely on your predictability. You become unreadable in the best way. But don't confuse pausing with passivity. You are not withdrawing. You are choosing your ground. When you do respond, it comes from clarity rather than chaos. Your words are fewer, cleaner, less defensive. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop justifying every boundary. You simply state what is true and let it stand. This habit reshapes your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who is steady under pressure. That self-image reinforces the behavior. Each time you pause instead of reacting, you cast a vote for the person you are becoming. Calm, grounded, hard to manipulate. You'll notice something else too. The emotional surges lose some of their intensity over time. When you stop indulging every impulse, they weaken. They realize they are no longer in charge. You train your mind the way you would train a restless animal, with consistency, not cruelty. You don't shame yourself for feeling. You simply refuse to be dragged, so commit to this. Make the pause your signature move. When something hooks you, don't bite immediately. Breathe, observe, question your judgment. Choose your response deliberately. Repeat this daily, not occasionally, daily. Because the truth is, the space between stimulus and response is where your freedom lives. When you expand that space, even by a few seconds, you reclaim control. You step out of the emotional currents that others try to pull you into. You stand on solid ground. And from that ground, you move only when you decide to move. Number 2, you no longer feel the need to defend yourself against every accusation. There was a time when every accusation felt like a spark landing on dry grass. You heard a hint of blame, a whisper of criticism, and something inside you leapt up, ready to argue, explain, justify, defend. It felt necessary, urgent, as if your very identity depended on correcting the record immediately. But now, something has shifted. You no longer feel that reflexive pull. You no longer treat every charge as a courtroom summons. And that right there is one of the clearest signs you're no longer easily manipulated. When you stop defending yourself against every accusation, you reclaim your center. You understand something most people miss. Not every comment deserves your energy. Not every misunderstanding requires a rebuttal. Not every judgment calls for a counterattack. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus said, If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. Sit with that. Your mind is complicit. That means your agitation isn't forced upon you, it's invited. And now you've learned to close the door. You begin to see accusations differently. Instead of reacting instantly, you pause. You let the words hang in the air without grabbing them. You breathe. You examine. Is there truth here? If there is, you accept it calmly. If there isn't, you let it pass. You don't scramble to prove your innocence like someone desperate for approval. You don't twist yourself into explanations that no one asked for. You remain steady, grounded, and that steadiness is unsettling to those who once relied on your defensiveness. Understand this clearly. Manipulators thrive on reaction. They throw out bait, criticism, exaggeration, distortion, hoping you'll bite. The moment you rush to defend yourself, you've stepped into their frame. You're now playing their game. But when you don't react, when you simply observe without internal collapse, the dynamic changes. You're no longer dancing to their tune. You're standing still while they spin. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been." That isn't denial, it's discipline. It's the deliberate refusal to let someone else define your inner state. You practice this daily. You remind yourself that your character is not at the mercy of another person's opinion. If you know who you are, you don't need to argue about it constantly. You don't need to campaign for validation. This doesn't mean you become passive or indifferent. It means you become selective. You respond when it serves clarity or growth. You stay silent when it serves peace. That's strength, real strength. The kind that doesn't shout. Start training this habit consciously. The next time you feel accused, whether fairly or unfairly, pause before speaking. Literally pause. Count slowly to 5. Feel the surge in your chest, the tightening in your throat. Observe it as a sensation, not as a command. Tell yourself, this is just an impulse to defend, I don't have to obey it. That small gap between stimulus and response is where your power lives. Then ask yourself a harder question. Why do I feel such a strong need to defend right now? Is it because I fear being misunderstood? Is it because I want to control how I'm seen? Is it because my ego feels threatened? Don't judge the answers, just see them clearly. The Stoic path isn't about pretending you're above ego, it's about recognizing it and choosing not to be ruled by it. Another practice, rehearse indifference to false judgment. Close your eyes and imagine someone accusing you unfairly. Picture yourself listening calmly. No interruption, no tightening of the jaw, no rapid-fire explanation. Just composure. See yourself responding briefly, if at all, and then moving on. Mental rehearsal strengthens your emotional muscles. When the real moment comes, you won't be caught off guard. You also begin to realize that defending yourself constantly sends an unintended message, that you are unsure of your own integrity. When you're secure, you don't feel compelled to argue your worth. Seneca wrote, "The wise man is content with himself." Content, not complacent, not arrogant, simply anchored. When you are anchored, accusations crash against you like waves against rock. Loud maybe, dramatic, but ultimately harmless. Let go of the fantasy that you can control how others perceive you. You can clarify facts. You can speak truthfully, but you cannot force understanding. And once you accept that, the urge to defend every detail starts to fade. You conserve your energy. You protect your attention. You choose dignity over drama. There's a quiet confidence that emerges when you stop scrambling to defend yourself. You speak less, but your words carry more weight. You explain once calmly if needed. And then you stop. You don't repeat yourself endlessly. You don't chase agreement. You let people think what they will. That freedom is intoxicating in the best way. It lightens you. At times, you'll still feel the old impulse rising. That's normal. Growth doesn't erase instinct overnight, but now you recognize it sooner. You interrupt it faster. You tell yourself, I don't need to prove myself here. And you mean it. That repetition becomes a new habit, a new default setting. Practice deliberate silence. When accused, experiment with saying less than you normally would. Notice how uncomfortable it feels at first. Stay with that discomfort. Discomfort is not danger, It's just unfamiliar territory. The more you tolerate it, the less control it has over you. Also practice separating your identity from external narratives. Write down what you value about your character, your principles, your efforts, your intentions. Read that list regularly. When accusations arise, measure them against your internal standard, not the shifting opinions around you. If you're aligned with your values, you can rest easy. If you're not, correct yourself quietly. No theatrics required. This shift is subtle but profound. You stop living in reaction mode. You stop being emotionally hooked by every critique. You become harder to manipulate because there's nothing easy to grab onto. No frantic defensiveness. No visible insecurity. Just calm evaluation and measured response. And here's the deeper truth. When you no longer feel the need to defend yourself against every accusation, you're no longer trying to control everyone else's mind. You're focused on governing your own. That's the Stoic aim. Master the inner world. The outer world will do what it does, so commit to this. The next time someone points a finger, fairly or unfairly, resist the automatic defense. Breathe. Assess. Decide. Speak only if it aligns with your values and serves a purpose. Otherwise, let it go. Let the words fall away. Let your silence stand. You are not obligated to attend every argument you're invited to. You are not required to defend yourself against every misunderstanding. You are responsible only for your character and your choices. Guard those fiercely. Let the rest drift past. When you reach this point, you feel lighter, less entangled, less reactive. You move through conversations with steadiness instead of strain. And that is how you know you are no longer easily manipulated. Number 3, you're comfortable saying no without guilt or over-explaining. There's a quiet kind of power that settles into you when you realize you can say no and let it stand there. No padding, no nervous laughter, no 10-minute explanation trying to soften the edges. Just a clean, grounded refusal. And if you're at the point where you can do that without guilt tightening your chest, without replaying it in your mind for hours afterward, that's not coldness. That's growth. That's strength. That's Stoic discipline woven into your character. You weren't always like this. Most people aren't. You were probably trained, subtly, persistently, to justify yourself, to make your boundaries palatable, to make your refusal easy for someone else to swallow. But somewhere along the way, you started to understand what the Stoics meant when they insisted that your highest duty is to your own reasoned judgment. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Read that again and let it land. If you cannot decline what violates your time, your energy, or your values, then who is in charge of your life? Not you. When you become comfortable saying no, you stop outsourcing your sense of safety. You stop negotiating your integrity. You realize that a simple refusal is not an attack, it's alignment. It's you choosing to remain steady instead of bending under invisible pressure. And the guilt that used to follow, that was never proof you were wrong. It was just conditioning, old wiring, a reflex. You don't have to obey reflexes anymore. The Stoics were relentless about this. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Notice what he doesn't say. He doesn't say you have power over how others react to your boundaries. He doesn't promise that people will applaud your clarity. He focuses on the one thing you can govern, your response. When you say no calmly without over-explaining, you are practicing that governance. You are choosing reason over fear, clarity over approval, self-respect over appeasement. And let's talk about over-explaining. Over-explaining is often just fear dressed up as politeness. It's the anxious belief that if you provide enough reasons, enough detail, enough apology, the other person will validate your choice. But the truth is this: someone who doesn't respect your no won't suddenly respect it because you wrote an essay about it. And someone who does respect you doesn't need the essay in the first place. So why exhaust yourself performing justifications? This is where Stoicism becomes intensely practical. You start by pausing before you answer. You breathe. You notice the urge to fill silence with explanations. and you let that urge pass. That space between stimulus and response, that tiny gap, is your training ground. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." Courage here doesn't look dramatic, it looks like restraint. It looks like saying, "No, I won't," and allowing the sentence to end there, period. No footnotes. You need to practice this deliberately. Don't wait for high-stakes moments. Train in small ways. Stand in front of a mirror and say no in a calm, neutral tone. Not defensive, not sharp, just steady. Notice your posture, relax your shoulders, keep your breathing slow. Repeat it until the word loses its emotional charge and becomes what it actually is, a boundary marker. Clean, clear, necessary. Then take it further. Write down 3 values that matter deeply to you: discipline, focus, integrity, peace, whatever resonates. Now ask yourself, does saying yes to everything honor these values or erode them? When you see that every unnecessary yes chips away at what you claim to stand for, your no stops feeling selfish. It starts feeling responsible. You're no longer easily manipulated because you no longer confuse kindness with compliance. That's a huge shift. Compliance is driven by fear, fear of rejection, conflict, disapproval. Kindness, real kindness, can coexist with firmness. You can decline something and still wish the other person well. You can refuse without hostility. That balance is Stoic maturity. It's emotional adulthood. There will still be discomfort. Don't expect it to vanish overnight. But instead of interpreting discomfort as a sign you did something wrong, reinterpret it as strength being built. Muscles ache when they grow. Character does too. Each time you resist the urge to justify yourself excessively, you're reinforcing a new identity, someone who trusts their own judgment. Try this exercise. At the end of each day, reflect quietly for 5 minutes. Ask yourself, did I say yes today when I meant no? If the answer is yes, don't shame yourself. Just observe. Then visualize how you would respond differently next time. See yourself speaking calmly, briefly. Hear your tone measured, grounded. This mental rehearsal prepares you. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, anticipating challenges so you're not caught off guard. Use it. Another practice: detach your worth from other people's reactions. When someone pushes back against your boundary, feel the impulse to fix it. Then remind yourself, their reaction belongs to them. Your responsibility ends at clarity. Repeat that until it sinks into your nervous system. You are not required to manage someone else's disappointment. As you grow more comfortable with no, something subtle shifts inside you. You stop needing to be perceived as agreeable. You stop chasing the relief of immediate approval. Instead, you cultivate something deeper: self-trust. And self-trust is incredibly difficult to manipulate. When you trust your internal compass, flattery loses its pull. Guilt trips lose their grip. Pressure tactics slide off you because they no longer hook into insecurity. But stay vigilant. Ego can creep in. Stoicism isn't about becoming rigid or dismissive. It's about aligning your choices with reason and virtue. Before you say no, check yourself. Is this boundary thoughtful? Is it consistent with who you want to be? If the answer is yes, stand by it. If not, adjust. Flexibility guided by principle is strength. Reactivity guided by emotion is weakness. So begin now. Make it a habit. The next time you feel that familiar tug, the urge to soften, to explain, to apologize for existing, pause. Inhale slowly, exhale fully, and then respond with simplicity. No. Let silence follow if it needs to. Silence is not your enemy. It's proof that you're no longer scrambling to defend your autonomy. You don't have to be loud to be unshakable. You don't have to be aggressive to be firm. You just have to be clear. Clear in your mind, clear in your words, clear in your values. And every time you choose that clarity, you reclaim a piece of yourself. That's the real sign you're no longer easily manipulated. Not that people stop trying, but that their attempts no longer move you. You stand where you are, grounded in reason, guided by virtue, and at peace with a simple, unapologetic no. Number 4, you don't seek constant validation or approval from others. There was a time when approval felt like oxygen to you. You didn't call it that, of course. You called it connection, harmony, being liked, being understood. but somewhere along the way, you realized how subtly dangerous that hunger can be. The moment you stop seeking constant validation is the moment you become difficult to manipulate. And that's not because you've grown cold, it's because you've grown inward. As Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Read that again. Be content, not defensive, not reactive. Content. When you no longer need applause to confirm your worth, you stop handing other people the steering wheel of your emotions. You start noticing something powerful. The less you crave approval, the steadier you feel. You're not scanning faces for reassurance. You're not replaying conversations in your head, dissecting tone and micro-expressions. You're not twisting yourself into shapes just to keep everyone comfortable. Instead, you stand, calmly, firmly. You let your values anchor you. This is pure stoicism. It's the quiet discipline of remembering what's actually in your control. Other people's opinions, not yours. Your character, entirely yours. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "I have often wondered how it is that every man loves himself more than all the rest of men, but yet sets less value on his own opinion of himself than on the opinion of others." That line should hit you like a bell. Why are you outsourcing your self-assessment to people who don't live inside your mind, who don't carry your conscience? When you stop chasing validation, you stop being easy to steer. Manipulation feeds on insecurity. Whispers, if you don't do this, they won't like you. It threatens social exile. It dangles approval as bait. But when your sense of worth is self-generated, those tactics fall flat. You can listen without bending. You can disagree without crumbling. You can walk away without feeling like you've lost something essential. That's strength. Quiet, grounded strength. And let's be honest, you don't break the validation habit overnight. It takes work. You've spent years being conditioned to seek gold stars. So start retraining your mind deliberately. Each day, practice catching yourself when you fish for reassurance. Notice the urge. Don't judge it, just observe it. Then pause, breathe slowly. Ask yourself, what do I think about this? Not what would impress others, not what would avoid criticism. What do you believe is right? That question builds inner authority. It strengthens your internal compass. You also need to redefine what approval even means. Approval from others is unstable currency. It fluctuates wildly. Today you're praised, tomorrow you're questioned. If your emotional state rises and falls with that tide, you'll never be steady. But approval from yourself, earned through integrity, discipline, and alignment with your principles, that's solid ground. Seneca reminded us, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. How often have you imagined disapproval that never even materialized? How often have you contorted yourself to avoid a judgment that lived only in your head? Let that sink in. Much of your need for validation is fueled by ghosts, so here's a practice for you. At the end of each day, sit quietly for 5 minutes. No distractions. Ask yourself 3 questions. Did I act according to my values? Did I speak honestly? Did I maintain self-respect? Answer privately. No performance. No social filter. If the answer is yes, let that be enough. If it's no, adjust tomorrow. That's Stoic self-audit. That's growth. And the more you rely on this ritual, the less you'll hunger for outside affirmation. Another exercise, deliberately withhold explanation. Not rudely, not defensively, just calmly. When you make a decision, state it simply and resist the urge to over-justify. Feel the discomfort rise. Let it pass. That tension you feel, that's the old approval reflex losing its grip. Stay with it. You don't need to over-explain your boundaries to earn the right to have them. You don't need unanimous agreement to validate your choices. There's a shift that happens when you internalize this. You stop performing, you start living. You realize that being misunderstood is not fatal. Being disliked is not catastrophic. What truly corrodes you is betraying yourself for applause. And once you see that clearly, you become less reactive. Criticism doesn't sting the same way. Praise doesn't intoxicate you. Both become data, not identity. You can consider feedback without absorbing it as truth. You can thank someone for their perspective without reshaping yourself to fit it. You'll also notice your relationships change. When you're no longer approval hungry, you interact more honestly. You're not subtly bargaining for affection. You're not agreeing just to keep peace. You become harder to guilt trip, harder to pressure, harder to emotionally blackmail, because manipulation requires leverage, and your old need for validation was leverage. Now it's gone, or at least shrinking every day. This doesn't mean you become indifferent to connection. Stoicism isn't isolation, it's sovereignty. You can value relationships deeply while refusing to depend on them for identity. That distinction matters. You can enjoy praise without chasing it. You can welcome respect without requiring it to function. You can stand alone if necessary. And that quiet independence radiates. People sense it. They may not articulate it, but they feel that you're not grasping, not pleading, not subtly negotiating for approval. You're simply present. Keep training yourself. When someone disagrees with you, resist the reflex to immediately defend your image. Instead, ask, is there truth here? If yes, improve. If no, release it. No drama, no spiral. That's emotional maturity. That's strength under control. Epictetus taught that it's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Apply that directly to approval. Someone's opinion is just that, an opinion. It only gains power if you assign it power. You might still feel the tug sometimes, that's human, but now you catch it faster, you pause before reacting. You choose deliberately instead of reflexively. That space between stimulus and response, that's where your freedom lives. And the more you operate from that space, the more unshakable you become. So stop asking, do they like me? Start asking, do I respect myself? Stop measuring your worth by applause. Measure it by alignment, by courage, by discipline, by whether you stood firm when it would have been easier to bend. When you do this consistently, something remarkable happens. You no longer fear disapproval, and once fear dissolves, manipulation loses its teeth. You don't need constant reassurance anymore. You don't need everyone nodding. You don't need to soften your edges to fit someone else's comfort. You move with calm certainty. You speak with intention. You rest in your own evaluation, and that is one of the clearest signs that you are no longer easily manipulated. You are governed from within, steady, self-contained, free. Number 5, you recognize guilt tripping and refuse to internalize it. You know you're no longer easily manipulated when guilt stops working on you the way it used to. Not because you've become cold, not because you've shut your heart down, but because you've finally learned to separate what is yours to carry from what never belonged to you in the first place. Guilt tripping thrives on confusion. It sneaks in through suggestion, through tone, through implication. It whispers, if you cared, you would, or after everything I've done, and it waits for you to fold. But now you pause, you breathe, you recognize the pattern, and instead of absorbing it like a sponge, you let it hover in the air where it belongs. The Stoics were unshakable on this point. You are responsible for your choices, not for other people's emotions. As Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Read that again. Sit with it. You are not obligated to contort yourself to manage someone else's disappointment. You are not required to betray your values just to relieve someone else's discomfort. When guilt is weaponized, it tries to convince you that their feelings are proof of your wrongdoing. But feelings are not verdicts, they are signals, and not all signals are accurate, so you start noticing the subtle shift. Instead of reacting instantly, you observe. You feel the tug in your chest. You feel the urge to defend yourself, to explain, to appease, and you don't move. You let that urge exist without obeying it. That's strength. That's discipline. That's stoicism in action. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Guilt tripping is an outside event. The story someone else is telling about you is an outside event. Your mind, however, is yours. Guard it. You begin to ask better questions. Is this guilt pointing to a genuine mistake you made? Or is it an attempt to control your behavior? Is there actual harm here that requires repair? Or is someone uncomfortable because you set a boundary? This distinction changes everything. Stoicism never asks you to become indifferent to real wrongdoing. It asks you to become clear, clear about your intentions, clear about your values, clear about your responsibility, and equally clear about what falls outside it. And here's the hard truth you're learning. People who rely on guilt often do so because it has worked before. Maybe on you, maybe on others, but you're not that person anymore. You don't rush to fix what you didn't break. You don't automatically assume you're at fault just because someone sounds hurt. You slow the moment down. You interrogate the feeling instead of surrendering to it. There's a quiet power in that pause. It might only last a few seconds, but in those seconds you reclaim yourself. Start practicing this deliberately. The next time you feel guilt rising fast and hot, don't argue with it immediately. Instead, label it. Say internally, "This is guilt." Then ask, "Is this aligned with my values?" If the answer is yes, if you genuinely acted against your principles, then own it calmly and correct it. Stoicism is about accountability. But if the answer is no, if the guilt is being handed to you like an unwanted package, imagine placing it back down. You don't have to pick it up. Another exercise, write down your core values. Not 10, not 20, 3 to 5, integrity, honesty, discipline, compassion, whatever truly guides you. When guilt is thrown at you, measure it against those values. Did you violate them? If not, stand firm. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Guilt tripping feeds on imagination, on catastrophic stories about what your refusal supposedly means. Return to reality. What did you actually do? What did you actually say? Strip away the drama. Look at the facts. You'll also notice something else changing inside you. You stop over-explaining. When you were easily manipulated, you might have felt compelled to justify every decision in exhausting detail. Now, you understand that clarity doesn't require a courtroom defense. A simple, calm statement is enough. You don't owe essays. You don't owe emotional theatrics. You owe honesty, that's it. This doesn't mean you become rigid or unkind. In fact, it's the opposite. When you refuse to internalize manipulative guilt, your compassion becomes cleaner. It's no longer tangled with fear. You can empathize without surrendering. You can listen without absorbing blame. You can say, "I understand you feel that way," without adding, "and therefore I must be wrong." That distinction is everything. Train yourself to sit with disapproval. This is crucial. Much of guilt-tripping works because you're uncomfortable being seen as the bad one. So practice tolerating that discomfort. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine someone misunderstanding you. Feel the tension that arises. Don't push it away. Breathe through it. Tell yourself, "Their perception is not my identity." Stoics constantly rehearsed adversity in their minds, not to become anxious, but to become steady. You can do the same. Rehearse staying calm while someone projects disappointment onto you. Visualize yourself grounded, unmoved, respectful, but firm. And remind yourself, boundaries are not betrayals. Saying no is not cruelty. Choosing your well-being is not selfishness. These are disciplined acts of self-respect. When guilt tries to label them otherwise, you see through it. You recognize the tactic. And recognition dissolves its power. There will still be moments when guilt sneaks past your defenses. That's okay. You're human. When it happens, don't shame yourself for feeling it. Instead, examine it like a Stoic philosopher examining a thought. Where did this come from? Is it rational? Is it useful? If it fails those tests, let it go. Not dramatically, not angrily, just release it. You are training your nervous system to respond differently, to not equate tension with truth, to not equate accusation with guilt, to not equate someone else's sadness with your wrongdoing. This is advanced emotional discipline. It takes repetition, it takes awareness, it takes courage. But once you master it, something shifts permanently. You feel lighter, conversations feel less like traps, decisions feel cleaner. You stop living in anticipation of someone else's emotional reaction. You start living in alignment with your principles. That's when you know you're no longer easily manipulated. Not because people stopped trying, but because their tools stopped working. Keep practicing the pause, keep questioning the narrative, keep anchoring yourself in what you control. Return again and again to the Stoic reminder that your character is your only true possession. Protect it, strengthen it, Refuse to trade it for temporary approval. And the next time guilt comes knocking, you'll recognize it immediately. You'll open the door, look it in the eye, and calmly decide whether it belongs in your house. Most of the time, it won't. Number 6, you stay calm when someone tries to provoke you. You know you're no longer easily manipulated when someone tries to provoke you and you don't take the bait. The hook is there, dangling in front of you, sharp words, subtle digs, exaggerated tone, calculated disrespect, and yet you remain steady. Not stiff, not cold, just grounded. There's a difference. Before, you might have felt that instant surge in your chest, that tightening in your jaw, that urge to defend, explain, attack back. Now there's space, a pause, and in that pause lives your power. This is what the Stoics were talking about all along. As Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. You've started to understand that deeply, not as a quote you admire, but as a rule you live by. When someone attempts to provoke you, they are trying to control your internal state. They want a reaction because a reaction is leverage. If they can make you angry, they can steer you. If they can make you defensive, they can corner you. If they can make you emotional, they can blur your clarity. But you've learned to recognize this pattern. And instead of reacting, you observe. You feel the initial spark of emotion, yes, but you don't let it ignite into wildfire. You let it pass through you like a gust of wind through an open window. You don't slam the window shut. You don't chase the wind. You let it move on. This calm is not weakness, it's discipline. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Read that again. Power over your mind, not over their words, not over their behavior, just your mind. That's your territory. That's your responsibility. And when you stop trying to control what's outside you and focus entirely on what's within, something shifts. You become harder to manipulate because your emotional buttons are no longer publicly accessible. They press. Nothing happens. They press harder. Still nothing. Eventually, the attempt loses momentum. But this level of composure doesn't happen by accident. You train it. You build it the way you build muscle, through repetition and resistance. You start by noticing your triggers without judging yourself for having them. When irritation rises, you don't suppress it or shame it, you study it. Where do you feel it in your body? How fast does it grow? What thoughts attach themselves to it? This curiosity slows everything down, and in that slowing down, you regain control. You're no longer a puppet pulled by invisible strings. You're the observer holding the strings in your own hands. Try this. The next time you sense provocation, don't respond immediately. Count 5 slow breaths. Inhale deeply. Hold. Exhale longer than you inhaled. Feel your feet against the ground. Relax your shoulders deliberately. This isn't passive, it's strategic. You are interrupting an old pattern. You are choosing clarity over chaos. Seneca warned, anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it. Notice that. The emotion harms you more than the insult itself. So why volunteer for self-inflicted wounds? Why hand someone the satisfaction of watching you unravel? Staying calm doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect. It means you respond from strength instead of impulse. There's a profound difference. Impulse is fast, loud, and messy. Strength is measured, quiet, and precise. When you're no longer easily manipulated, you don't rush to defend your ego. You don't scramble to prove your worth. You don't feel that frantic need to win the exchange. You understand that your worth isn't on trial, and because of that, you can choose your response or choose silence without feeling diminished. This calm presence unsettles those who rely on emotional control. They expect fireworks, they expect escalation, they expect you to match their intensity. Instead, they meet composure, and composure is disarming. It sends a subtle message. You cannot access me without my permission. That's intimidating, not in a loud or aggressive way, but in a deeply rooted way. It signals self-mastery, and self-mastery is rare. To cultivate this, practice negative visualization. The Stoics called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of challenges. Before entering situations where tension might arise, imagine someone attempting to provoke you. Picture the tone, the words, the body language. Then imagine yourself calm, breathing evenly, speaking slowly, or choosing not to speak at all. Rehearse your composure. This mental rehearsal strengthens neural pathways. It makes calm your default rather than your exception. Also, detach your identity from immediate emotional waves. You are not your anger, you are not your irritation. You are the awareness behind them. Say to yourself, this is a feeling, not a command. That sentence alone can shift your entire posture. It reminds you that emotions suggest actions, but they do not dictate them. You decide, always. There will be moments when your calm feels unnatural, almost forced. Stay with it anyway. Growth often feels unfamiliar before it feels authentic. Over time, your nervous system adjusts. The spike becomes smaller. The recovery becomes faster. Eventually, the spike barely appears at all. You'll notice something remarkable. What once would have ruined your mood now barely scratches your focus. That's freedom. Quiet, steady freedom. Make it a habit to reflect at the end of your day. Ask yourself, did I protect my peace today? Did I allow anyone to steer my emotional state? If you slip, don't condemn yourself. Study the moment, learn from it, then recommit. Stoicism isn't about perfection, it's about practice. It's about returning again and again to the discipline of your own mind. When you stay calm under provocation, you signal to yourself that you are no longer at the mercy of external forces. That realization changes you. You walk differently. You speak with less urgency. You listen more. You conserve energy. Instead of scattering your attention on every slight or challenge, you channel it toward what actually matters, your growth, your values, your direction. And here's the deeper truth. The moment you stop reacting automatically is the moment you reclaim authorship over your life. Manipulation loses its grip when you refuse to participate in emotional tug-of-war. You don't need to dominate. You don't need to overpower. You simply remain steady. Like a mountain in shifting weather. Clouds pass. Wind howls. The mountain doesn't argue with the storm. So commit to this. Train your pause. Guard your internal state like it's sacred, because it is. When someone tries to provoke you, see it as an opportunity to practice mastery. Smile slightly. Breathe slowly. Choose deliberately. Let your calm speak louder than any reaction ever could. Over time, you'll realize that staying composed isn't just a sign you're no longer easily manipulated. It's proof that you belong to yourself. Number 7, you make decisions based on values, not pressure. You know you're no longer easily manipulated when your decisions stop swinging with the emotional weather around you. When you don't fold just because someone sighs loudly, raises their voice, withdraws affection, or floods you with urgency. You move differently now. You pause, you breathe. And instead of asking, what will make this tension go away, you ask, what aligns with who I choose to be? That shift is quiet, but it is powerful. It means your compass is internal. It means pressure has lost its throne. The Stoics were relentless about this. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Think about that. If your choices are reactions to other people's moods, expectations, or threats, subtle or loud, you are not choosing. You are being steered. But when you root your decisions in values you have examined and deliberately adopted, you become difficult to push. Not because you are stubborn, because you are anchored. Pressure thrives on speed. It wants you rushed. It wants you slightly anxious, slightly guilty, slightly afraid of disappointing someone. It feeds on your desire to belong, to avoid conflict, to be seen as good. And there is nothing wrong with those desires, but if they are unexamined, they become handles others can grab. When you begin making decisions based on values, you slow the process down. You create space between stimulus and response. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That strength is not loud, it is deliberate. It is the quiet refusal to let urgency dictate your integrity. You start by getting brutally clear about what you stand for, not in abstract decorative language, not in vague ideals that sound impressive. You define your values in a way that can guide behavior, integrity, self-respect, patience, discipline, honesty, courage. Pick a few. Then refine them. What does integrity require when you are under emotional pressure? What does self-respect look like when someone tries to guilt you? What does courage mean when silence would be easier? If you don't define these ahead of time, pressure will define them for you. Here is a practice. Write down your top 5 values. Then for each one, finish this sentence. If I truly lived this value, I would. Be specific. Push yourself. Don't let the answers stay comfortable. This is not for display. It is for alignment. When you finish, read them slowly. You are constructing a standard, and once you have a standard, you have something to measure decisions against. When someone applies pressure, whether through flattery, fear, anger, or urgency, you now have a filter. Instead of reacting, you ask, does this choice support my values? If it does, you move forward calmly. If it does not, you decline without apology, not with aggression, not with drama, just clarity. That clarity unsettles manipulators because they cannot hook into confusion. You are no longer scrambling to maintain approval. You are maintaining alignment. Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Pressure often operates through imagined consequences. If you don't do this, something bad will happen. If you refuse, you'll lose status. If you say no, you'll regret it. When your decisions are value-based, you test those thoughts. You examine them. You ask, is this fear consistent with reason? And most of the time, it shrinks under scrutiny. What remains is your principle. And principle does not tremble as easily as emotion. This does not mean you become rigid or cold. It means you become intentional. There is a difference. Rigidity resists everything. Intentionality evaluates everything. You are still open. You are still capable of compromise. But compromise now has boundaries. You will not trade long-term self-respect for short-term comfort. You will not abandon what you believe is right just to quiet someone else's discomfort. That is growth. That is strength. Train this daily. Don't wait for high-pressure moments. Start small. Before making a decision, even a minor one, pause and ask, which value is guiding this? If you can't name one, reconsider. This builds awareness. Over time, the pause becomes natural. You stop moving automatically. You begin moving deliberately. Another exercise, practice delayed responses. When faced with a request that triggers urgency, tell yourself you will respond after reflection. Even a few minutes of distance can dissolve emotional pressure. Use that time to consult your written values. Read them. Feel them. Ask yourself if saying yes would expand your integrity or shrink it. This habit alone will dramatically reduce manipulation in your life. Expect discomfort at first. When you stop bending to pressure, some people will react. They may accuse you of changing. They may call you selfish. Stay steady. Growth always disrupts patterns. Epictetus reminded his students that if you want to improve, you must be content to be thought foolish or strange. Let them think what they want. Their opinions are outside your control. Your character is not. You are building an inner court of judgment. Instead of asking, how will they see me? You ask, how will I see myself? That question is liberating. It shifts authority inward. Manipulation depends on external authority, approval, rejection, reward, punishment. When your authority is internal, those tools weaken. Keep reinforcing this mindset. Each night, reflect. Ask yourself where you acted from values and where you acted from pressure. No self-condemnation, just observation. Marcus Aurelius journaled to refine his character, not to shame himself. You can do the same. Awareness sharpens discipline. Over time, something remarkable happens. You feel lighter, decisions become cleaner. You no longer replay conversations wondering if you betrayed yourself. You sleep with less friction in your chest. That is the reward of alignment. It is subtle, but it is profound. And here is the truth, people sense it. When you operate from values, your energy changes. You are less reactive, less defensive, less eager to please. There is a steadiness to you, not arrogance, not indifference, stability. Manipulators search for instability, doubt, guilt, fear. When they cannot find it, they move on, so keep practicing. Write your values, revisit them weekly, delay responses when pressured, reflect nightly, strengthen the muscle of pause, remind yourself daily that your mind is your domain. Let Seneca echo in your thoughts, "He who is brave is free." Bravery here is not dramatic. It is the quiet courage to choose principle over pressure. You are not here to be pushed around by every gust of emotion that blows your way. You are here to cultivate character, to become someone who decides deliberately, someone who stands calmly in their convictions, someone who cannot be easily manipulated because their roots go deep. Choose your values, live them, protect them, and when pressure knocks, greet it with composure and clarity. You no longer bend because someone else leans. You stand because you have chosen where to plant your feet. Number 8, you observe behavior patterns instead of believing empty promises. You know you're no longer easily manipulated when you stop being hypnotized by words and start paying attention to patterns. Promises lose their glitter. Declarations stop dazzling you. You don't get swept away by dramatic vows, emotional speeches, or sudden bursts of charm. Instead, you watch, quietly, patiently. You've learned that behavior is the truest language a person speaks, and once you see that, you can't unsee it. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus reminds you, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. That cuts both ways. If someone claims loyalty, integrity, love, discipline, or change, you don't measure it by what they say. You measure it by what they consistently do. Words are wind. Patterns are proof. And when you mature into this mindset, you stop chasing reassurance and start studying repetition. You become a quiet observer of cause and effect. This shift is powerful because manipulation thrives on short memory and emotional reaction. Manipulation depends on you believing the latest promise instead of remembering the last outcome. It feeds on your hope overriding your evidence. But when you begin to track patterns, you anchor yourself in reality. You start asking internally, not what are they saying right now, but what have they repeatedly shown me? That question alone can save you years of confusion. You need to train yourself to pause. When someone makes a promise, resist the urge to immediately accept it as truth. Let it breathe, let it sit. Then mentally scroll back through your memory. Has this pattern appeared before? Has this cycle repeated? The Stoic Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Extend that wisdom outward. Waste no more time arguing with someone's words. Watch who they are being. This doesn't mean you become cynical or bitter. It means you become discerning. There's a difference. Cynicism assumes the worst. Discernment observes what is. One closes the heart. The other sharpens the mind. You're not looking for flaws, you're looking for consistency. Does their behavior align with their claims over time? Do actions and statements harmonize, or do they clash? You don't need confrontation to see the truth. You just need attention. And attention is a discipline. Start practicing pattern recognition intentionally. For the next week, stop reacting immediately to what people promise you. Instead, quietly note it. Write it down if you have to. Then track outcomes. Did behavior match intention? Did follow-through happen without excuses? You are not judging. You are observing. This small exercise will strengthen your ability to detach from emotional persuasion and lean into factual repetition. Another exercise, slow down your emotional investment. When someone offers grand assurances, notice your internal response. Do you feel relief, excitement, validation? Good, acknowledge it. Then say to yourself, let me see the pattern first. This single sentence creates space between stimulus and response, and in that space your power grows. Viktor Frankl echoed a Stoic truth when he said that between stimulus and response there is space. In that space lies our freedom. Use it, expand it, live in it. When you observe patterns, you also stop negotiating with reality. You stop telling yourself stories to justify inconsistency. You stop saying, maybe this time will be different, without evidence. The Stoics teach acceptance of what is, not attachment to what could be. Epictetus was blunt. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Part of that reaction is intellectual honesty. You must be brave enough to admit what repeated behavior is telling you. This requires emotional steadiness. Manipulation often comes wrapped in urgency. Believe me now, trust me this time. Things are different. Urgency pressures you to bypass analysis, but you don't rush anymore. You've learned that consistency unfolds over time, not in dramatic moments. You're willing to wait, you're willing to see, patience becomes your shield. Develop a habit of reviewing behavior objectively. At the end of each day, reflect briefly. Ask yourself, what did people show me today? Not what they promised, not what they intended. What did they demonstrate? Keep your reflection neutral, almost clinical. This mirrors the Stoic evening review where practitioners examine their actions and impressions. You can extend that same discipline outward, sharpening your perception of others. You'll notice something profound when you live this way. You feel calmer, less reactive, less desperate for reassurance. Because you no longer hinge your stability on verbal commitments. You trust evidence. You trust time. You trust patterns. And patterns don't shout. They whisper steadily. There's strength in this restraint. When someone realizes their words alone no longer move you, manipulation loses oxygen. You don't argue, you don't accuse. You simply respond according to demonstrated behavior. If patterns improve, you adjust your trust gradually. If patterns remain broken, you adjust your expectations accordingly. No drama, no theatrics, just alignment with reality. Remind yourself daily, consistency is character. Anyone can speak beautifully in a moment. Not everyone can sustain integrity across months and years. Your job is not to police others. Your job is to see clearly, and clarity is freedom. Here's another practical drill. When you hear a promise, silently convert it into a question. Will the next 30 days reflect this? Then detach. Observe. If the answer becomes yes through repeated action, trust grows naturally. If the answer becomes no, you don't need confrontation to feel the truth. You simply recalibrate. This keeps you grounded in observation rather than persuasion. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Often, empty promises hook you because they feed imagination. They paint a future that feels comforting or exciting. But imagination without evidence is a trap. When you discipline yourself to focus on present patterns, you cut through fantasy. You anchor in what is tangible. This mindset also strengthens your self-respect. You stop begging for consistency. You stop chasing alignment. You quietly decide that actions are the entry ticket to your trust. Nothing more, nothing less. And you don't announce this rule, you live it. Take this seriously. Make it a standard. Decide that repetition outweighs rhetoric. Decide that steady behavior impresses you more than emotional declarations. Decide that time is the ultimate validator. These internal commitments will transform how you interact with the world. You will feel different. Grounded, less shaken by persuasive language, less tempted by dramatic promises. You'll notice red flags earlier, not because you're suspicious, but because you're attentive. And attentiveness is power. In the end, observing patterns instead of believing empty promises is about living in accordance with truth. The Stoics called this living in agreement with nature. Nature operates on cause and effect, repetition and consequence. So do people. When you align yourself with that reality, you step out of illusion. So watch, listen, reflect, pause before you believe, track consistency, trust repetition over rhetoric. Let time reveal character. This is not coldness, it is clarity, and clarity is how you stop being easily manipulated. Number 9, you detach from drama rather than getting pulled into it. Imagine this. A situation arises that could easily ignite tension, provoke arguments, or spark gossip. In the past, you might have felt that familiar tug, that magnetic pull into the chaos, like a moth drawn to a flickering flame. But now, something's different. You notice it, the urge to react, to defend, to prove, to get tangled up in the drama, and you simply step aside. You observe it, recognize it for what it is, and consciously choose not to engage. This is the hallmark of someone who is no longer easily manipulated. You've learned the Stoic art of detachment, and with it comes a kind of freedom that is deceptively simple but profoundly powerful. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If your mind is occupied with constant drama, it will reflect chaos. If you cultivate calm and detachment, your very presence communicates stability and invulnerability. By detaching from drama, you stop feeding the energy that others try to draw from you. You're no longer a puppet on strings. You're the observer who chooses whether to act or stay still. To truly embody this, you must practice the mental pause. The next time you feel the stirrings of drama, a heated conversation, a manipulative comment, an attempt to provoke you, stop. Take a deep breath. Literally count to 3. Watch your initial reaction and acknowledge it without judgment. Recognize that your first impulse is not always aligned with your higher self. This pause is your secret weapon. It gives you the clarity to respond intentionally rather than react automatically. You begin to see that drama thrives on your emotional investment. Without your engagement, it dissipates like smoke. You're learning to conserve your energy for things that truly matter, and in doing so, you regain control over your life. Detaching from drama doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means choosing the battles that are worthy of your attention and letting go of the rest. Seneca reminds us that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Often, the drama you fear or anticipate is mostly in your mind, the imagined slights, the projected attacks, the stories you tell yourself about what people think or intend. By practicing detachment, you stop spinning these imagined webs. You no longer amplify every minor inconvenience or interpersonal friction into a storm. Instead, you observe, assess, and decide whether it deserves your energy. You create a buffer between your inner peace and the chaos of the external world. Here's a practical exercise to solidify this habit. Imagine drama as a river, fast-moving and turbulent. Your default is to be swept along by it, tossed by its currents, powerless to resist. Now visualize yourself stepping onto a sturdy bridge, high above the water. You can see the river, hear it, maybe even feel the mist, but you are not in it. You are above it, detached, calm. Practice this visualization daily, especially in moments when you feel emotionally charged. Over time, it becomes instinctual. Your mind no longer automatically dives into conflict. You develop the ability to respond with intention, not reflex. Another key practice is the daily reflection, something the Stoics called evening meditation. Each night, review your day and identify moments when you felt pulled into drama. Examine what triggered you, why you reacted, and what you could do differently next time. Write it down. This reflection strengthens your awareness and creates a mental map of the patterns that used to control you. By recognizing the familiar triggers, you empower yourself to step away in real time rather than after the fact. Detachment is a skill, and like any skill, it requires attention, repetition, and honest self-assessment. You also need to consider the company you keep. Drama is contagious. People who thrive on chaos can drag you in before you even realize it. When you're learning to detach, notice who consistently pulls you into unnecessary conflict. This isn't about judgment, it's about preservation. Limiting exposure to these dynamics is an exercise in self-respect. You're telling the world that your peace is not negotiable, and over time, others recognize this. The less you participate in drama, the less others attempt to manipulate you through it. Silence and calm become your most persuasive tools. Detachment is reinforced by a shift in perspective. Instead of seeing drama as something personal, something that demands a response, see it as a reflection of others' fears, insecurities, and desires for control. When someone tries to provoke you, they're really projecting their own inner turmoil. Recognize this and remind yourself, their chaos is not your responsibility. You cannot control their behavior, but you can control your engagement. This is where true Stoic power resides. As Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. You cannot stop others from creating drama, but you can stop it from owning your mind. Now let's make this actionable. Start small. In your next interaction, catch yourself before responding to a potentially provocative comment. Ask yourself, do I need to engage in this? Will my reaction improve the situation or only escalate it? If the answer is no, step back. Don't justify yourself, don't explain excessively, don't internalize the negativity. Simply observe and redirect your energy elsewhere. The more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. Soon, you'll notice a shift. People who once attempted to manipulate you through drama begin to lose influence. They sense your unshakable composure, and your very calmness becomes a deterrent. Detaching from drama is not passive. It's active self-mastery. It requires courage to resist the immediate pull, discipline to maintain your calm, and mindfulness to observe without judgment. Every moment you choose detachment, you reinforce a powerful habit that your inner life is yours alone. Over time, this habit rewires your responses. Arguments lose their grip, insults slide off, provocations fail. You are the eye of the storm, serene while chaos swirls around you. And this serenity is magnetic. People respect it, even subconsciously. They sense that you are not easily swayed, not easily controlled, not easily manipulated. Finally, remember that this is a lifelong practice. You will falter. You will feel the tug of old patterns. When this happens, don't berate yourself. Observe the lapse, learn from it, and return to your center. Detachment grows stronger each time you consciously choose peace over provocation. Over time, you'll find that the world feels less like a battlefield and more like a landscape where you navigate with clarity and calm. Drama loses its power because you no longer supply the fuel it needs. Your mind, your energy, your peace becomes sacred territory, protected by the very habit of detachment. You are no longer a participant in the manipulation. You are the observer, the master, the calm in the storm. Your task today is simple. Start noticing. Notice the drama. Notice your impulses. Practice the pause. Step onto your bridge above the river and watch the chaos flow beneath you. Each time you do, you claim a piece of freedom that no one can take. You are learning to detach, and in doing so, you are learning to reclaim yourself entirely. This is the Stoic way to walk through life unmanipulated, unshaken, untouchable. Number 10, you accept what you can't control and focus only on your response. Provide practical exercises. Let's dive into this with a direct, human-to-human approach, stretching your perspective into the heart of Stoic thinking. When you really grasp that some things are simply beyond your control, a subtle but profound shift happens inside you. You start to notice it in everyday life. The minor irritations, the people who try to pull strings around you, the chaos that seems to ripple through your world. You realize that all these external forces, opinions, circumstances, even the unpredictable behavior of others, are like waves in the ocean. They rise, they crash, they recede, but none of them dictate your inner calm unless you give them that power. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Let that sink in, not over events, not over the world, but over your own response. That is where the armor forms, not in futile attempts to control what will inevitably be uncontrollable. Now, this isn't just a feel-good thought to nod along with. You have to live it, breathe it, embody it. Begin noticing the moments when your mind starts to wander into the territory of "why did they do that?" or "I can't believe this happened to me." Each time, pause, literally pause, take a breath. Step back from the instinctive judgment or emotional flare. Ask yourself, what can I actually influence here? 9 times out of 10, the answer is your own actions, your own choices, your own attitudes. That is the core of your agency, and it's terrifyingly liberating once you accept it. You are no longer a puppet dangling on the strings of circumstance or someone else's manipulations. You are the director of your response. Imagine life as a series of challenges landing at your feet, each one designed to test whether you've mastered this art of response. Someone criticizes you unfairly. You feel that twinge in your chest, the rise of irritation, but you don't have to act on it in a reactive way. You don't have to let their words dictate your inner temperature. Your mind becomes a controlled environment, and you are the thermostat. You decide whether the temperature rises into anger or stays at the cool level of rational composure. You notice that when you react impulsively to things outside your control, you give away your power piece by piece. Conversely, when you pause, assess, and respond thoughtfully, or sometimes even choose not to respond, you reclaim that power immediately. Practicing this requires an intentional mental discipline, one that the Stoics cultivated rigorously. Start small, pick one daily scenario where you tend to lose your center. Perhaps it's traffic, perhaps it's a message from someone who triggers you, or maybe it's the constant barrage of social media noise. Each time it comes up, acknowledge the situation for what it is, an external factor. Then pivot your energy to your response. Ask yourself, what is my next right action? Sometimes the answer is to act. Sometimes it's to remain silent. Sometimes it's to simply breathe and observe. In that pause, you are no longer a reactive creature. You are a deliberate one, a conscious force in your own life rather than a victim of circumstance. Epictetus put it bluntly, men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. That is the Stoic key, turning quietly in the lock of your mind. When you internalize this, the manipulations of others start to fall flat. A boss tries to provoke you. A friend or family member nudges you toward guilt or obligation. Strangers or peers aim for your insecurity. All of it loses its bite because you have recognized the distinction between what is yours to manage and what is not. You can no longer be pulled off center because you understand that their power over you exists only if you allow it to. To reinforce this daily, make it a habit to rehearse scenarios in your mind. Visualize a situation that would normally frustrate you or provoke you. Then, in your mental rehearsal, practice separating what is external from what is within your control. Feel the space between stimulus and response widen. Imagine answering with measured calm or even choosing inaction when action is futile. By rehearsing this, you wire your brain to default to intentionality. So when the real moment arrives, your response isn't a reflex. It's a decision, rooted in your sovereignty over your own mind. You can also integrate micro exercises throughout your day. When a minor inconvenience occurs, a delayed train, a misplaced item, a rude comment, catch yourself before the irritation spreads. Name it silently. This is external. My response is internal. Then breathe and decide how to act. It may be as simple as smiling at the situation, redirecting your focus, or taking constructive action rather than reacting with resentment. Over time, these small interventions accumulate into a robust mental framework that is nearly unassailable. The Stoics called this apatheia, a state not of cold indifference, but of rational serenity, a place where your mind is free from the turbulence of external manipulation. Another critical step is to journal. Every evening, reflect on the day. What circumstances pushed you? Where did you react before you could pause? Celebrate the moments you acted intentionally and identify the triggers that still hold sway over your mind. By externalizing these reflections, you create a feedback loop for conscious improvement. You train yourself to recognize the subtle ways others may attempt to steer you, and more importantly, you strengthen your capacity to redirect that energy toward what you control. Your thoughts, your actions, your peace. There's power in repetition. Daily reminders, mantras, Stoic aphorisms, they are not empty words. They are mental anchors. Keep phrases like, I control my response, not the situation, or external events are indifferent, my actions are paramount, close at hand. Speak them to yourself in moments of agitation. Let them seep into your consciousness until, eventually, your instinctive reaction is tempered by awareness. You begin to notice the difference immediately. Anxiety drops, tension releases, and manipulation attempts feel like they bounce harmlessly off your mind. Finally, embrace patience. This mastery does not come overnight. Your old reflexes will attempt to drag you back into reactive patterns, and that's okay. Recognize it, accept it, and guide yourself back gently but firmly. The beauty of this Stoic practice is that progress compounds. Every moment you choose your response over reacting, every pause you insert between stimulus and action, strengthens the muscle of your autonomy. You are, in effect, training yourself to be untouchable, not by walls or avoidance, but by the quiet, unwavering discipline of your own reasoned mind. So, as you move forward, anchor yourself in this principle. The world will continue to throw situations, challenges, and manipulations at you, but your freedom lies in your hands. You cannot control the storm, but you can control how you sail through it. You cannot stop the waves, but you can steer your vessel calmly, deliberately, without fear. You cannot prevent others from attempting to sway or influence you, but you can maintain a mind that is steady, rational, and centered. And in that steady mind, you find the ultimate strength, the strength of a life no longer dictated by external forces, but led entirely by your own conscious choice. This is the essence of being no longer easily manipulated. It is not arrogance or detachment from life. It is mastery of self, the quiet command of your inner kingdom. Take a breath, observe, choose, respond, repeat, over and over until your response is no longer a reflection of circumstance, but a declaration of who you are and the unshakable sovereignty of your mind. You're not the same person you used to be, and that's the point. If you saw yourself in these signs, it means you've done the inner work. You pause before reacting. You question emotional pressure. You don't chase approval. That's strength. That's awareness. That's stoicism in motion. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself in Meditations, you have power over your mind, not outside events. And now you live that truth. Keep sharpening your judgment. Keep guarding your peace. The world may try to pull your strings, but you've learned to hold them yourself. Stay steady, stay self-governed, and keep becoming unshakable.